Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live stream. I'm going to be talking about diet evangelism tonight. And by that, I just mean sort of extreme dietary positions, people who get really intense about food. And that's something that I used to do in, I'd say, my early 20s. So anyway, I'll be giving some thoughts on that. And this is based on a video that I saw on YouTube earlier this week. It was on a channel called Rawlicious, and I've linked that video below this one. I have several thoughts on it, so I'll be getting into that. Usual disclaimer before I do, I am a medical herbalist, so I will be commenting on it from both a personal and a professional perspective, but that perspective is my own, and anything that I talk about in terms of recommendations for health, this is the internet, so this is just for entertainment and educational purposes. If you have any serious health issue, please do go and see a professional herbalist or go and see your doctor. So, all right, that out of the way. Oh, and slight trigger warning as well. I will be talking about eating disorders in this because I'll be narrating a bit of personal history. So, all right. So this video that I saw, which I will link below this live stream video, was a channel called Rawlicious. Very nice lady, interesting video, just talking about her sort of raw food vegan diet. Now, for me, that's not a problem. I am personally a vegan. I enjoy watching people talking about their diets. In general, even like watching some of the extreme carnivore people, and just it fascinates me really. But I do think there are some things in that video that I thought were really great, and other things that I think are not so great. So some of the things that I thought were great, like some of the positives, I've sort of made a little list here. There was a lot of, this could be generalized to people talking about their particular diets, what might be considered extreme diets. I guess some people will consider my diet as a vegan extreme, but you've got other people who eat like raw food vegan or carnivore on the extremes, or they're keto people, or even gluten-free, you know, lots of different dietary things. But what I liked about this video, and others like it, I enjoy the independent thinking. I enjoy that. I particularly like it when people are eating a bit more plant-based, because in general, that is going to be better for health, unless you have an allergy to a particular plant. I like the health focus of many of these videos. And I also like the positive attitude of many of these videos, in the sense that they say change is possible. You can improve your health. And a lot of the videos, sometimes, particularly this one, showed a lot of compassion, which I like. That's not always present in some of these extreme dietary videos, but there was a lot of compassion there, a lot of, I want you to change your diet because that will change your health and your life. Okay, that's all really nice sentiment. Some of the negatives, what I don't like, is what I call culty thinking. This idea that, and this I think this is just my personal perspective, and I'll get into my own biases and where some of my opinions were formed in a moment. But I think sometimes there's this sense of people trying to achieve enlightenment through the colon with diet. You know, you get this whole thing of like, this diet will cleanse you or transform you or detox you. And there is a historical or philosophical truth in that to some degree, in the sense that in many traditional medicine practices, detox in the sense of eating certain foods to change your constitution a bit and to help remove difficult substances from your body was always part of the tradition. But it's taken on a really, I think, unhealthy tone in many of these diet culture videos, where it's sort of like, as I say, enlightenment through the colon. If you eat this diet, it will make you more than human. You will literally, in this video, I think she used the word, you will ascend. You will eat a raw food diet and you will be able to ascend. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. You literally enlightenment through the colon, very culty thinking. The other thing I thought was, there's a difference in my mind between intuition, which I'm all for, and I don't wish to disparage. I think intuition is a true and good thing. You can have strong intuitions about whether something or someone is good for you or not. But it's not the same thing as desire. And those two things often get conflated. So we can fool ourselves very often. We can have a strong desire for something. And I'll talk a bit about this lady's video in particular. But that sort of desire intuition confusion is often used in these videos to say, oh, if you eat this food, it's really bad for you because I feel this way about it. It's like, no, that's not really it doesn't sound like intuition to me. It sounds like a projection. It sounds like they're desiring a particular outcome and then projecting it onto that food. But that's just what I see. And then the main thing that bugs me against any of these videos, whatever angle they're coming from, keto, vegan, carnivore, whatever, and I say this as a vegan myself, is the homogeneity, the idea that one size fits all, that there is one simple, single solution for everyone on the planet. And in terms of health, maybe in terms of ethics, maybe in terms of the environment, maybe, but in terms of health, I don't think that's true. And the reason I say that is, for example, I don't disbelieve people who say that their diet has improved their health. And you've got people who say that who've gone on a keto diet, have gone on an extreme all meat diet, from people who've gone on an all raw foods diet, from people who've gone on vegan diet. You've got all these different diets, people saying their health has improved. Now, granted, some of them may be delusional. Granted, some of those changes may be short term. Let's get back to them in 20 years' time, etc. But let's assume that all those people aren't lying, that they're not, that they're telling the truth. If what they're saying is true, then maybe there are reasons for that. Maybe those reasons are down to genetic or inherited differences. Maybe those reasons are down to differences in microbiome. So, for example, and many other reasons, cultural reasons, psychological reasons. But so, for example, there are two famous cases. There's somebody like on YouTube, famous anyway. There's somebody like Freely the Banana Girl, who's a famous vegan extreme YouTuber, versus somebody like Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson's carnivore daughter, both of whom claimed that their health issues were sorted out, on the one hand, by their extreme raw plant-based diet, and on the other hand, by their extreme meat-based diet. I suspect that there may be differences in microbiome between those two individuals, between the organisms that lived in their gut. In the case of somebody like Michaela Peterson, who had rheumatoid arthritis, it may have been that certain foods certain vegetable or plant-based foods that she was eating, she was sensitive to, either as a result of perhaps some inherited thing, maybe the liver wasn't making an enzyme to help her break down some plant protein, or some microbes in her gut that were feeding off some, say, plant fiber like cellulose, were producing substances that her immune system was overreacting to, which in the case of Freely, the vegan one, may have been the opposite case. So I think all of this stuff is a lot more nuanced, particularly in terms of health. And that is what I sort of dislike about this diet stuff. So my own sort of personal slant on this comes from the fact that in my early 20s, I was sort of coming out of clubbing a lot, and kind of a friend of mine visited and looked in my cupboards and said, oh, the food you eat is terrible. When she was a yoga teacher, she went through all the cupboards and said, this food is terrible. You shouldn't be eating all this. And thought, oh yeah, she's right. So I went, and this was before I'd started studying herbal medicine and sort of really got into sort of food properly. I was just a former art student who was partying too much at this point. So I thought, yeah, she's right. I need to change my diet. So I started doing all this, what I was thinking was healthy eating. And I was influenced by a lady that some of you may remember, Gillian McKeith, formerly Dr. Gillian McKeith, who turned out not to be a doctor at all. She was famous on British telly for a while. She sort of did a show called You Are What You Eat and looked at people's poo and stuff. So she was interesting. But she wrote a book, and I got her book in my early 20s, and she was advocating this thing called food combining, which is where you eat fruit separate from fatty foods. And I think fats could combine with carbohydrates, and you could combine fats with proteins, but you couldn't eat proteins with carbohydrates, and you had to eat fruit separately. And obviously, with at the time, I had no scientific training. I swallowed this whole, pun intended. And so I started doing this food combining thing, and it worked really well initially. I was like, wow. And I think in part because I was eating much more whole food. So I was eating much more real, much less processed food, much less sugar, lots more fruit, lots more veg, lots more, whole protein. At the time, I was omnivore, so I was eating like salmon, oily fish, chicken, blah blah blah, everything, but doing it in this food combining way. But what started happening after 3 or 4 months is I ended up just feeling ravenously hungry. I'd eat an entire bowl of like whole wheat pasta or brown rice with vegetables and then feel so hungry. Or I'd eat a whole chunk of salmon with broccoli and then just feel really hungry. And I lost so much weight. And what I learned from that was a few things. Firstly, that eventually it was, essentially what happened over a few months was that I developed an eating disorder that's known as orthorexia, which is where you're trying to control your diet so much that it becomes an obsession, and that spiraled into binge eating. So after about 6 months, because I'd been so controlling the sugar, not wanting to have anything sweet, I ended up massively craving sweet things. And I'd go into a petrol station, a gas station, to say in America, and buy loads and loads of biscuits and whatever, and just eat them all at home, all in one night, and then feel really sick. I used to call it being a failed bulimic because I never actually threw up. I'd just eat it all. But it was kind of a dark time, to be honest. And I think I was doing, as often is the case, sublimating a lot of emotional stuff into food. Um, but it was really the sort of health thing that got me into that mental space that facilitated that transition into an eating disorder. The propensity of the eating disorder was there already within me at the time, but it was that sort of Gillian McKeith food combining obsessive nonsense rubbish that got me into that. And it was actually a really good friend of mine who sent me to see a nutritionist who was fantastic. She was so sensible. She just said, most people, I tell them to go home and eat more healthily. With you, I'm going to tell you to go home and have a bacon sandwich. Now, she was a Buddhist, so this was not standard advice, but she was absolutely spot on. And actually, that one visit really snapped me out of it. Now, do I still have those sort of tendencies when I'm stressed? Yeah, a bit, of course. It's a bit like being a former alcoholic. One never really loses it completely. But that consultation with that amazing woman was really a watershed moment. She was very generous as well. So the point about all of that was that the mindset of trying to over control was a gateway drug to an eating disorder for me, and I think it is for many others. And what disturbs me about many of these videos, which sort of go into sort of this idea that this diet can make you ascend, it can change your life, it can cleanse you, it can liberate you, it's the evangelical language. It's this language of sort of enlightenment through the colon that really disturbs me, because if you have unpacked emotional baggage, as many of these viewers will, as many people do, it's just I think it's potentially dangerous, actually. Now, personally, I'm a free speech absolutist, meaning that has nothing to do with left and right politics, by the way. They're two separate axes on the political spectrum. But my personal politics are somewhat to the left and extremely libertarian. So my view is people should be, on the whole, unless they're suggesting something outrageously illegal or that could cause harm, I think people should be allowed to express whatever thoughts that they have. But so I don't think these videos are problematic, but I do think it's important to get alternative perspectives out there. So what else did I want to say about this? So in terms of the video that I've linked, this Rawlicious video, as I say, I quite like the lady who's presenting it. I think she was I liked her passion. I liked the sense of being able to be independent thinking. I liked her health focus. I liked the positive change message. And there were some interesting messages in the video as well. There's this sense that she mentioned being dissatisfied with life and challenged her viewers to doing a 24 to 48-hour challenge with raw food. That's not going to be a problem for most people. I think that's an interesting experiment. And then she was saying, see what feelings come up. Like, and she was saying when she did that, she was sad and shaky and had headaches, which made me think, what withdrawals were going on? Did she stop drinking lots of coffee or tea? And she was saying this was all due to withdrawal from cooked food, but I'm just like, not sure. Maybe if she'd been eating loads and loads of sugar and loads of coffee or tea or caffeine or something, then perhaps, or alcohol. There was also the talk about the diet being cleansing. Now, detox is a whole other subject that I will address at some point. But yeah, I think detox is a real thing in the sense that your liver and your kidneys are always working to detox you. And there are substances in many plants that can accelerate those processes or enhance them or induce them, like enzyme inducing in the liver and so on. So a detox is a real thing. You can have foods or substances in plants or foods or medicines sometimes that can accelerate those natural detox pathways. But it's also kind of taken on this pseudo spiritual overtone that I don't like very much, because I think it again it gets a bit culty, and it could potentially trigger people into sort of subsuming their emotional issues into a physical sort of food behavioral thing, which might not be that healthy. And also in the video, she talked about sort of maybe giving up friends who aren't good for you. And I felt that sounded a bit culty to me as well. But again, that could be a positive. Reading it on the positive side, I take on board that the possibility that, the idea of if you have friends in your life who are negative influences or who are a bit of a downer, then yeah, fair enough. So I don't think that's necessarily wholly a negative. But yeah, and then the last thing, and I wrote this whole quote down, was look up to those that are living the lifestyle that have the body and lifestyle that you desire. And I thought, oh, I'm not sure about that, because I know what she was aiming for, which was just, look to people who are authentically doing what you want and then model yourself on them. I just think particularly and she made some of these points as well, which I thought was interesting, particularly on the internet, you don't really know whether people are that or not. And so much is Instagram and so much is posed, and we're all aware of that. And also she said that have the body and lifestyle that you desire. And this goes back to a point I was making earlier about sometimes the confusion between desire and intuition. Intuition and desire are two separate things. Intuition is gut feeling, is just, and that can be a real, genuine, powerful thing, I think. But it's very often confused with our desires. When we want something, we can tell ourselves, we can fool ourselves that that thing will be good for us because we want it. And I think this is a classic example of like, don't do that. Don't look at somebody off the internet or something. You can use that person consciously as a like, oh, I want to be like that, what I imagine that person to be, because that is the ideal that I aspire to. But as long as I think you're aware that that is what you're doing, and that is distinct from the actual person, as long as you're aware that it's a projection that you're making in your own mind that you're moving towards. Anyway, I think I'm gonna leave it there. So because this is already nearly 20 minutes. This has been a bit of a ramble from my mind, but I have linked, and I will link the original video that inspired this week's tangent below. And I've also linked my favorite nutrition channel on YouTube, which is called Nutrition Made Simple. I really like this channel because he's super fact-based. And Obviously, I like my scientific referencey stuff, but I also like my esoteric stuff, like my astrology, and I'm quite open to esoteric or metaphysical stuff as well. But what I like about his channel is it's all very science based, it's all very fact based, and it's very, very balanced. So he doesn't out the gate say this diet or that diet or this good, that bad. He just looks at the evidence and goes, okay, well, this is where it looks. And it's very nuanced and even handed, which I like. So, anyway, hope this has been enjoyable to you. If it has, please do like it. Please share it. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye. Thanks, Lucy. We've just seen your comment. Thanks. Bye.